the subjective list of greatest wrestlers to have never held a world championship, some usual suspects come to mind. Owen Hart, Jake Roberts, Arn Anderson, Ted DiBiase, if you don't count his 1988 purchase, though we really should, and Roddy Piper are among a pretty elite group of wrestling royalty that have never enjoyed that particular moment in the sun. Another name that belongs in that god tier is one of the most gifted and captivating heavyweight brawlers to ever lace up a pair of boots. There was just something about the way that Scott Hall carried himself. His swagger was infectious, his poise unflappable, his charisma and superstar quality was such that Hall, who's as white as the napkins in the Cultaholic break room, spent 4 years playing a Cuban drug czar, and the extreme majority of the fans never once questioned it. That speaks to a rare it factor, because for most other wrestlers, making that sort of leap would only make them look foolish. But not for the bad guy, whose everlasting fame and iconic presence assured him greatness as soon as he was truly given an opportunity. I'm Sam from Cultaholic.com, and here are 10 things you didn't know about Scott Hall. Join us! Number 10. Seeing the world. One of the reasons that Scott Hall jumped to WCW in 1996 was the favourable travel schedule. Working less dates for a lot more money is the sort of Godfather offer that you don't just turn down flat. And with a wife and 2 young kids at home, the decision was a no-brainer. The life of a wrestler is filled with travel, something that Hall was happy to do less of. Because after all, he'd done enough moving around even before his time as a wrestler. As a kid, Scott Hall was part of a military family who constantly moved from place to place. And by his own recollection, he and his family moved every single year for the first 15 years of his life. In his final years as a student, the future wrestling star attended an American high school in Munich, which was then still West Germany. For some people, that sort of unending movement sounds more than tiresome, but in the first 2 decades of Scott Hall's life, it was all that he knew. Number 9. The Unthinkable. Through our thirst for knowledge about the lives and backstories of professional wrestlers, we've all uncovered some truly dark and disturbing anecdotes, some of which are so surreal and out of this world that you can hardly bring yourself to believe them. Hall's troubled life has had its fair share of gloomy tales, but none quite like the one that occurred in Orlando, Florida in January of 1983. While bartending at a strip club, things got heated between Hall and one particular patron. The bad blood spilled outside where the two scuffled, and after Hall knocked the man down, he saw him reach for a gun. Hall managed to wrestle the gun away, and before he knew it, the man was shot in the head, killing him. Hall ended up being charged with second-degree murder, but the case was dropped due to insufficient evidence. Decades later, Hall admitted these exact details with much remorse, still able to vividly recall precise images from that fateful night. Number 8. Getting discovered. Hall had an affinity for professional wrestlers since his childhood, though it wouldn't be until his mid-20s that he began preparing for life inside the squared circle. He was trained by Hiro Matsuda, a veteran grappler and mentor who fostered such talents as Lex Luger, Paul Orndorff, and Hulk Hogan. It would take more than just training to catch a necessary break or two in wrestling, and he caught such a break one day while, of all things, grocery shopping. While scanning the shelves at a Publix supermarket in the Tampa area, Hall caught the eye of a fellow shopper, one Barry Windham. The son of Blackjack Mulligan noticed Hall's impressive size and physique, and the two struck up a conversation in which Hall admitted he was trying to break into the wrestling business. Windham helped open the door for Hall, and before long the novice wrestler was taking bumps with Windham and Mike Rotundo critiquing him. So the lesson here, we guess, is to make sure that you're in proper shape before going to buy groceries. You know, just in case Barry Windham happens to be in the same store. Number 7. The World Is Mine. He was Big Scott Hall, Texas Scott Hall, the Diamond Stud with 2 Ds, and for reasons that elude a normal functioning brain, Starship Coyote. But no gimmick is more synonymous with Hall than that of Razor Ramon, the toothpick-chomping, gold-wearing pseudo-drug dealer who went from the gutters to the high life, just like a certain Al Pacino movie character that liked to introduce anyone that got in his way to his little friend. As the story goes, when Hall met with Vince McMahon and Pat Patterson in 1992, they told him that WWE needed a bad guy. To which Hall, no doubt remembering that restaurant scene in Scarface, began doing his best Tony Montana impression, which McMahon and Patterson both thought was absolutely genius. The thing was, apparently neither Vince nor Pat had ever seen Scarface and didn't realize that Hall was just aping a contemporary pop culture character. This lends credibility to the story that McMahon had the pirate Paul Burchill character killed off because he had no idea who Captain Jack Sparrow was. Bonus fact, Hall claims that he came up with the Razor part of the name, while it was Tito Santana that suggested Ramon to complete the alliteration. Number 6. Arriving at the dance. Wrestling fans in Worcester, Massachusetts on Monday, July 20th, 1992 were witnesses to a rather significant match, even if it was one of the squash variety. On that date, Razor Ramon competed in his first match that would air on television, which hit syndication airwaves about 3 weeks later. In the match, Razor did what all WWE wrestlers of the time were accustomed to doing, and that's smack around a nondescript enhancement talent before polishing him off without breaking a sweat. The enhancement talent in question was Paul Van Dale, a name that might not ring too many bells, though he was a regular WWE job guy of the era. While Van Dale never really achieved stardom in the wrestling business himself, his daughter would. The man that Razor Ramon beat in his first televised match just so happens to be the father of everyone's favourite dance break enthusiast, Carmella. With more calls for intergender wrestling, perhaps in July of 2022, WWE could commemorate this occasion by pitting Carmella against Scott Hall's son Cody, or maybe they shouldn't. Number 5, looking out for you. One wrestler that Scott Hall has always been quick to praise is Larry Zbyszko, a man he's long considered a friend and mentor. When Hall was a green young wrestler trying to catch a break with the AWA back in the mid-80s, he worked with Zbyszko and credits him for going above and beyond to do what some veterans won't. And that's make the kid look good by giving him tons of offense. Hall greatly recalled the gesture years later, so it's obvious that it meant the world to him. A decade or so later, Zbyszko helped Hall once more, this time after the bad guy had already become a certified star. It was the night that Hall jumped the guardrail, disrupting an undercard match in double denim, pretending to be a callous interloper that was fixing to start a turf war. This, along with Hall's promo, proved to be an unforgettable moment, with an assist from Zbyszko. According to Hall, Eric Bischoff wanted him to enter via the aisleway like any other wrestler would, but Zbyszko convinced him to have Hall come out of the crowd to make it feel more like a shoot. And it's hard to imagine this landmark moment without Hall's intrusion coming from over the guardrail, so we need to point to Larry Z right there. Number 4, evening at the Improv. For as much criticism as Hall has received throughout his career, it's hard to accuse the man of being selfish as a wrestler. Fellow clickmates like Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and Kevin Nash have all reportedly been ones to refuse jobs at different times, while Hall escapes that knock. The way he put over supposed jobber 123 Kid in a monumental upset supports this theory, as does the time that Hall did another job that he wasn't supposed to do. In November 1997, Hall was scheduled to wrestle Chris Jericho on Monday Nitro. At the time, Jericho was pigeonholed as just a cruiserweight and was scheduled to be beaten by the larger Hall, but Hall had other ideas. He covertly told Jericho to come up with a finish that he could win with, and that way, post-match, Hall could attack him, giving Larry Zbyszko, with whom Hall was feuding at the time, a reason to run in and make the save. Hall did the shock job as he'd intended, which of course drew Eric Bischoff's ire. Usually in wrestling, you'd catch hell for not wanting to job, that wacky Razor always breaking new ground. Number 3, drawing an ace. Hall's career post-WCW is filled with a number of curiosities, even if his work had understandably diminished due to age and ongoing issues. Throughout 2001, Hall wrestled for New Japan Pro Wrestling as part of Team 2000, aligning himself with former NWO allies like Scott Norton, Hiroyoshi Tenzan, and Masahiro Chono. On a New Japan tour in September 2001, Hall competed in the G1 World, he wrestled Kaiji Muto for All Japan's Triple Crown, and he even battled with a future icon. On September 9th, 2001, before 3,000 fans in Togane, Japan, Hall wrestled a 24-year-old Hiroshi Tanahashi. Several years before, Tanahashi would win his first belt with New Japan. The young lion hadn't even been wrestling for 2 years at the time of the match, in which he defeated Hall in a mere 4 minutes. Several months later, Hall would be off to WWE to begin an ill-fated rehash of the New World Order, while Tanahashi continued his slow rise to IWGP immortality. Few might have figured that the two men ever crossed paths, but nearly 2 decades ago, they did. Number 2, absence of royalty. In his 4-year stint as Razor Ramon, Scott Hall was ever present on WWE programming. His first year saw him pushed near the top as a credible heel, before becoming one of the company's top babyfaces, adjacent to the main event without ever getting a chance to be the guy. You can always count on Razor being prominent on any WWE pay-per-views, be they WrestleManias, SummerSlams, or Royal Rumbles, and yet it's through that last event that we come to an odd realization. Scott Hall might just be the biggest star of the WrestleMania era that never actually competed in a Royal Rumble match. Between 1993 and 1996, Razor wrestled in title matches in the undercard, one against Bret Hart for the world and the next 3 for his IC title, and they both excluded him from the 30-man gauntlet match. In 96, Razor did did briefly run into the match while trying to get a 1-2-3 kid, but that was his lone participation in any form of a Royal Rumble match. Perhaps that's why he won WCW's World War III Battle Royal in 1997, just to make up for it. And number 1, gold around his waist. The reaction from fans in New Haven, Connecticut proved to be quite loud as Razor deposited Rick Martel with his patented Razor's Edge, capturing the Intercontinental title for the first time in his career. Ramon became quite synonymous with the workhorse belt over the next 2+ years, including competing in matches for it at 2 different WrestleManias, one of which being quite historic. Not only is Scott Hall synonymous with the Intercontinental title, but he made history with it too. Upon defeating Dean Douglas for the gold at the 4th In Your House in October 95, Razor Ramon became the first man to win that belt 4 or more times. Wins over Diesel and Jeff Jarrett in 94 and 95 respectively had him knotted out at 3 with Jarrett and Shawn Michaels, before the win over Douglas put him in the lead. It took almost 4 years for his record to fall, occurring when Jarrett defeated Edge in July 99 to win his 5th. Nonetheless, Scott Hall carved out an impressive niche throughout his illustrious career, whether it was winning belts, mesmerizing audiences, or making unforgettable history in his own unique way.
Thanks for watching. Let us know what you think in the comments below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter at Cultaholic. You can check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you like what we do here at Cultaholic, you can check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/Cultaholic. And no matter what you do, don't ever forget to hit subscribe and join us.